The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They sent radio signals into the void. They built telescopes and searched for signs of life. They dreamed of the day when they would finally know the truth. That day came on a cold morning in December. Una Arc was sitting at her station aboard Tguk 7, an orbital defense platform floating high above the Earth. She was 34 years old, with sharp eyes and steady hands. Her job was simple: watch the screens. Report anything unusual? Most days, nothing happened. Most days, the universe stayed quiet. But not today. The screens flickered. A wave of energy swept across her sensors like nothing she had ever seen. Una leaned forward and pressed her fingers against the console. The readings made no sense. There was something out there. Something big. Something moving toward Earth at impossible speed. She opened a communication channel with a trembling voice. "Command, this is Tguk 7. I have unknown contacts approaching the lunar perimeter. Count is. I cannot count them all." "There are hundreds," silence answered her. Then a deep voice spoke through the static. It was General Dakim, the commander of the United Earth Defense Initiative. He was an old man now, with gray hair and a face carved from stone. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Most people had called him paranoid. Most people had laughed at his warnings about threats from beyond the stars. Nobody was laughing now. "Show me," General Kim said. Una transferred the sensor data to his screen. 300 ships emerged from fold space just beyond the moon. They were massive, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. Their hulls were black and covered with strange symbols. They moved in perfect formation, like predators circling their prey. General Kim studied the images in silence. His hands did not shake. His voice did not waver. He had known this day would come. He had seen the intercepted signals 40 years ago. He had read the transmissions that spoke of conquest and subjugation. He had watched humanity ignore the warnings and continue with their petty wars and small concerns. But he had not been idle. In secret, he had built something. A weapon, a shield. A last hope for a species that did not know it needed saving. "Activate Project Heta," he said. Across the solar system, hidden systems came to life. Weapons platforms on the dark side of the moon powered up their railguns. Stealth warships hiding in the asteroid belt started their engines. Defense satellites that had been sleeping for decades opened their eyes and turned toward the approaching fleet. The alien ships stopped moving. A message broadcast across all frequencies in every language humanity had ever spoken. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated by machines that had learned to speak through centuries of conquest. "People of the third planet, you have been selected for integration into the Valoran Dominion. Resistance is not advised. Surrender your governments. Surrender your weapons. Surrender your world. You have 1 hour to comply. Failure to comply will result in extinction." Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness. He was a Valoran, tall and thin, with pale skin and eyes like polished obsidian. He had delivered this message to over 2,000 species during his long career. Every single one had surrendered. Some had begged. Some had cried. Some had tried to negotiate. But all of them had understood the simple truth of the universe. The strong take what they want. The weak give what they must. Korath checked the time and waited for the humans to respond. He expected diplomats. He expected fear. He expected the same pathetic display he had witnessed countless times before. What he received was silence. The hour passed. No transmission came from Earth. No shuttle launched toward his fleet. No white flag appeared on any frequency. Korath frowned. This had never happened before. "Perhaps their communication systems are primitive," one of his officers suggested. "They may not know how to respond." "Send the message again," Korath ordered. They sent it again. And again, the humans did not answer. Deep below the surface of the moon, Una Park stood in a command center filled with soldiers. General Kim was beside her, his eyes fixed on a holographic display showing the enemy fleet. Around them, men and women in uniform waited at their stations. Some were scared. Some were excited. All of them were ready. "They think we are afraid," General Kim said quietly. "They think we will beg for mercy, like all the others. They do not understand what we are." He turned to face his people. These were the sons and daughters of a species that had survived ice ages and plagues. These were the children of warriors who had fought with sticks and stones against beasts that should have destroyed them. These were the inheritors of a legacy written in blood and fire and stubborn refusal to die. "Humanity does not surrender," General Kim said. "We never have. We never will. Today we show the universe what happens when you threaten our home," he gave the order. On the dark side of the moon, massive railguns fired for the first time. Tungsten rods the size of buildings accelerated to 1/3 the speed of light. They crossed the distance to the alien fleet in seconds. Admiral Korath did not even have time to give a command. 47 of his ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Debris scattered across the void. Thousands of Valoran soldiers died. Without understanding what had killed them, the bridge of Korath's flagship shook with the force of nearby explosions. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted in confusion. Damage reports flooded the communication channels. "What is happening?" Korath demanded. "Where did that attack come from?" His sensors showed him the answer: the moon. The humans had built weapons on their moon. They had hidden them for years, waiting for this moment. They had known the Dominion was coming. They had been preparing. Korath felt something he had not experienced in centuries. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. Cold, primal fear. All ships returned fire. He screamed, "Destroy them. Destroy them all." But the humans were not finished. More weapons activated. More attacks came from directions Korath had not expected. The primitives had built an entire defense network, and they had kept it hidden until the perfect moment. The first battle for Earth had begun, and for the first time in 4,000 years, the Valoran Dominion was losing. The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of fire and death and desperate courage. 6 hours that changed the history of the galaxy forever. Lieutenant Teru stood at his post aboard Tygok 7, firing defense cannons at enemy fighters that swarmed around the platform like angry insects. His hands moved without thinking. Aim, fire. Aim again. Fire again. Around him, his fellow soldiers fought with everything they had. Specialist Hannah Cho worked beside him, her fingers dancing across her console as she managed the platform's shield systems. Every time an alien weapon struck their defenses, she redirected power to reinforce the damaged sections. Sweat dripped down her face. Her muscles ached. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Her home was behind her. Her family was down there on that blue planet. She would die before she let the enemy reach them. Admiral Korath threw everything he had at the human defenses. Plasma cannons, missile barrages, fighter swarms. Attack after attack crashed against Earth's orbital platforms. Some shots got through. Some humans died. But the defenses held. And that was when Korath discovered something even more terrifying than the railguns. The humans had hackers. Minhobik was 26 years old. He had spent his entire adult life studying the intercepted alien transmissions, learning to read their code, understanding their systems. Now he sat in a dark room on Earth, surrounded by screens and keyboards, and he was inside the enemy fleet. "I am in there targeting computers," he reported through his headset. His voice was calm, almost bored. To him, this was just another puzzle to solve. "Give me 2 minutes. You have won," General Kim replied. Minho smiled and got to work. Aboard the Valoran flagship, chaos erupted. Weapons began firing at random. Defense systems shut down without warning. Navigation computers displayed impossible coordinates. One cruiser fired its main cannon directly into the ship beside it. Another vessel's engines overloaded and exploded. "What is happening?" Admiral Korath screamed at his officers. "Why are our systems failing?" "Unknown, Admiral. We cannot regain control. Something is inside our network. Korath stared at the screens, showing his fleet tearing itself apart. This was not possible. The Valoran Dominion had conquered thousands of worlds. Their technology was supposed to be superior. Their systems were supposed to be impenetrable, but the humans had found a way inside. They had learned Valoran code. They had studied Valoran weaknesses. They had prepared for this war long before the first shot was fired by the time. Korath managed to isolate his flagship systems from the network. 89 of his ships were gone. Some had been destroyed by human weapons. Some had been destroyed by their own malfunctioning systems. Some had simply collided with each other in the confusion. Admiral, his second officer, said quietly, "We must retreat. We cannot continue this fight." Korath wanted to refuse. He wanted to press the attack and crush these arrogant primitives. But he looked at the tactical display and saw the truth. He had lost nearly 1/3 of his fleet in 6 hours. His ships were damaged and disorganized. His crews were terrified and demoralized, and the humans were still fighting. "Pull back to Mars orbit," he ordered through clenched teeth. "All ships retreat." The Valoran fleet turned and ran. For the first time in 4,000 years, subjugation fleet fled from a species that should have been helpless prey. But the humans were not satisfied with victory. They wanted more. Captain Suji Lim had been waiting for this moment. She was a pilot, one of the best in the United Earth Defense Initiative. Her squadron of stealth fighters had been hiding in the debris field around Earth's orbit, invisible to alien sensors, waiting for the order to strike. That order came now. "Oh, units. Pursue," General Kim's voice crackled through her cockpit. "Do not let them escape intact." Suji pushed her throttle forward and felt her ship leap into the void. Behind her, 20 stealth fighters followed in perfect formation. They were small and fast and nearly impossible to detect. The retreating Valoran fleet did not see them coming. They struck the enemy supply vessels first. Fuel carriers, ammunition transports, medical ships. The explosions lit up the darkness like new stars being born. Suji flew through the chaos, her weapons finding target after target, her reflexes sharp as razors. A Valoran escort ship spotted her and opened fire. Suji rolled her fighter to the side, dodging plasma bolts that would have vaporized her instantly. She came around behind the escort and launched 2 missiles into its engine section. The ship broke apart in a ball of flame. "Target destroyed," she reported calmly. Moving to next objective. By the time the Valoran fleet reached Mars orbit, they had lost another 30 vessels. Admiral Korath sat in his command chair and stared at the damage reports with hollow eyes. His glorious subjugation fleet was a broken wreck. His career was finished. His reputation was destroyed. But none of that mattered compared to what he had to do next. He had to send a message to the Dominion Council. He had to explain what had happened. He had to tell them that a primitive species from a worthless planet had just handed them their worst defeat in 4,000 years. His hands trembled as he recorded the transmission. "This is Admiral Korath of the 3rd Subjugation Fleet. Our mission to Earth has failed. I repeat, our mission has failed. The humans were prepared for our arrival. They have weapons we did not anticipate. They have technology we do not understand. They have warriors who fight without fear." He paused and closed his eyes. The next words felt like poison on his tongue. "They were waiting for us. They knew we were coming. And they fight like nothing we have ever encountered. I request immediate reinforcement. I request heavy battleships and siege weapons. These humans are not prey. They are predators. And if we do not destroy them now, I fear they will become a threat to the entire Dominion." The message traveled across the stars at faster than light speeds. Within days, it reached the throne world of the Valoran Dominion. Within hours, it had spread to every member species of the Council. Within minutes, it had been leaked to the subjugated populations that served the Dominion across 1,000 worlds. The whispers began in slave quarters and prison camps. They spread through mining colonies and factory planets. Beings who had never known hope began to feel something strange stirring in their hearts. A species had refused to surrender. A species had fought back. A species called humanity had looked at the most powerful empire in the galaxy and said no. On Earth, the celebrations were brief. General Kim allowed his soldiers one night to mourn their dead and honor their victory. Then he gathered his officers for a new mission briefing. This was just the beginning, he told them. They will return with a larger fleet. They will return with greater weapons. We bloodied them today, but we did not defeat them. Not yet. Una Park stood among the officers, her uniform still stained with dust from the battle. What do we do now, sir? General Kim looked at her with eyes that held no fear, only determination. Now we take the fight to them. We have ships. We have weapons. And we have something they will never understand. He pointed at the officers around him. We have the will to survive. Prepare the fleet. The war has only just begun. The throne world of the Valoran Dominion was called Varith Prime. It was an ancient planet, covered with towering cities of glass and metal. Billions of beings lived there, serving the ruling castes who had built an empire across the stars. For 4,000 years, Varith Prime had been the heart of galactic power. Nothing had ever threatened it. Nothing had ever challenged it until now. The Dominion Council gathered in the great hall of their ancestors. 12 species sat at the long table, each one representing a founding member of the empire. They were proud beings, tall and terrible in their power. They had crushed rebellions. They had enslaved worlds. They had broken the spirits of countless civilizations, but today they were afraid. The humans destroyed nearly half of our subjugation fleet, the Valoran High Chancellor said. His voice echoed through the hall like the toll of a funeral bell. This has never happened before. In 4,000 years, no primitive species has ever successfully resisted our first strike. Perhaps we underestimated them, a Telvari representative suggested. The Telvar were insectoid beings with compound eyes and clicking mandibles. They had once been a proud warrior race before the Dominion had conquered them. Now they served as soldiers and laborers, their spirits broken long ago. We did not underestimate them, the High Chancellor snapped. They deceived us. They hid their true capabilities. They pretended to be primitives while building weapons in secret. This was planned. This was deliberate, the Council argued for hours. Some wanted to send a massive fleet to destroy Earth completely. Others worried about the cost of such an operation. A few suggested that perhaps negotiations might be possible. Perhaps the humans could be reasoned with. In the end, they decided to send a diplomat. Envoy Sereth was chosen for the task. He was old and experienced, having negotiated the surrender of over 50 species during his long career. He knew how to speak to frightened populations. He knew how to offer terms that seemed generous while hiding the chains of slavery. Go to the humans, the High Chancellor commanded. Find out what they want. Offer them limited autonomy within the Dominion. Make them understand that resistance is futile. And if they refuse, he paused and let the silence speak for. Him Sarath bowed and departed for the neutral station. Where the meeting would take? Place he arrived, expecting to find desperate. Representatives begging for mercy. He expected tears and pleading, and the usual pathetic display of a defeated species grasping at any hope of survival. What he found was Ambassador Yun Kong. She was waiting for him in the meeting room. Sitting calmly at a small table. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that seemed to look straight through him. She wore a simple black uniform with no decorations except for a small flag on her shoulder showing the planet Earth. "Welcome, Envoy Sarath," she said. Her voice was polite but cold, like ice forming on a winter morning. "Please sit down. We have much to discuss." Sarath studied her as he took his seat. He had dealt with thousands of aliens in his career. He could usually read their emotions easily: fear, anger, hope, desperation, but this human showed nothing. Her face was blank. Her hands were still. She seemed completely relaxed, as if they were discussing the weather instead of the fate of her entire species. "Ambassador Kong," he began with his most diplomatic tone, "I come with an offer of peace. The Dominion is prepared to be generous. Your people fought well in the initial engagement. We respect strength, Perhaps an arrangement can be made that benefits both our peoples. Yun Kong listened without expression. When he finished speaking, she reached into a folder beside her and withdrew a single document. She slid it across the table toward him. Before we continue, she said, "I would like you to read this." Sarath looked down at the document. It was written in both human script and translated into Valoran. The title made his blood run cold. "A declaration of war," he whispered. "You are declaring war on the Dominion." "We are not asking you to leave us alone," Ambassador Kong said. Her voice was still calm, still polite, but there was something beneath it now. Something hard as steel. "We are not begging for peace. We are informing you that humanity has decided to dismantle your empire." Sarath stared at her. In all his years of diplomacy, he had never heard anything like this. Species begged for mercy. Species negotiated for survival. Species did not declare war on the greatest power in the galaxy. "It cannot be serious," he said. "You are one planet, one species. The Dominion controls 3/4 of the galaxy. We have fleets beyond counting. We have weapons that can shatter worlds. You would throw away your entire civilization for pride?" Ambassador Kong smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Let me show you something." She pressed a button on the table. Holographic images appeared in the air between them. Shipyards hidden beneath the ice of Europa. Factories buried deep inside asteroids. Fleets of warships waiting in the darkness beyond Neptune. Hundreds of vessels, each one designed specifically to fight and kill Valoran ships. "We intercepted your transmissions 40 years ago," she explained. "We knew you were coming. We knew what you did to other species. We saw the records of planets burned and populations in slaw. Fed, we understood that surrender meant extinction." Sarath stared at the images with growing horror. This was not a desperate defense. This was an invasion force. The humans had not just prepared to protect themselves, they had prepared to attack. "You built all of this in 40 years?" he asked weakly. "Humanity learns quickly when motivated," Ambassador Kang replied. "And nothing motivates us like survival." She leaned forward, and for the first time, emotion entered her voice. Cold, controlled rage. "You came to our world to enslave us. You came to steal our freedom and break our spirits like you have done to so many others. But we are not like the others, Envoy Sarath. We are a species born from struggle. We have fought each other for 10,000 years. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We have crawled through blood and fire to reach the stars." She stood up and looked down at him with contempt. "We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will not become another conquered race in your empire of slaves. Instead, we will free every species you have chained. We will burn every throne you have built. We will tear your dominion apart piece by piece until nothing remains but ashes and memory." Sarath felt his hands trembling. He tried to speak, but no words came. Ambassador Kang turned toward the door. "Go back to your masters. Tell them what I have told you. Tell them that humanity is coming, and tell them to be afraid." She walked out of the room without looking back. Sarath sat alone in the silence, holding the declaration of war in his shaking hands. He had come to negotiate a surrender. He would return with news of catastrophe. The humans were not fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for conquest, and the galaxy would never be the same. When his report reached the Dominion Council, panic spread through the ruling castes. Emergency sessions were called. Fleets were mobilized. Defenses were strengthened. But beneath the frantic activity, a terrible understanding began to take hold. They had awakened something they did not understand. They had threatened a predator and expected it to cower like prey. They had made the worst mistake in the history of their empire, and now they would pay the price, too. Years had passed since the first battle above Earth, 2 years of blood and fire and impossible victories. The conflict spread across the stars like wildfire. Burning through territories that had been stable for centuries, Admiral Unipark stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Chungmu, watching as her fleet emerged from fold space above a planet called Korothor. She was not the same woman who had first detected the alien armada in her sensor screens. War had changed her. Her eyes were harder now. Her decisions came faster. She had learned to send soldiers to their deaths without hesitation because hesitation costs more lives. Admiral, her tactical officer, reported the Dominion garrison is scrambling their fighters. They know we are here. Good, Una replied. Launch all squadrons. Destroy their orbital defenses. I want landing zones cleared within the hour. Her fleet moved like a single organism, each ship knowing its role. Each captain trusted to execute without question. The humans had learned to fight as a unified force, something the Dominion had never faced before. Their enemy was used to species that crumbled under pressure, that scattered when their leaders fell. Humanity did the opposite. When their leaders fell, others stepped up. When one ship was destroyed, the others fought harder. The battle for Korath 4 lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Dominion garrison was destroyed, and the human fleet controlled the planet. But victory was not the goal. Liberation was. Una led the first shuttle down to the surface herself. She walked through the ruined streets of the capital city, past burned buildings and scattered debris. Her guards surrounded her, weapons ready for any remaining threats. But there were no enemies left. Only the people they had come to save, the Korathi, emerged from their hiding places slowly, fearfully. They were reptilian beings with scaled skin and wide golden eyes. For 300 years, they had served the Dominion as slaves. They had worked in mines and factories, building weapons that would be used to conquer other worlds. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. An elderly Korathi approached Una with trembling steps. He fell to his knees before her, tears streaming down his face. Please, he begged, we will work for you. We will serve you. Just do not hurt us. Una reached down and gently lifted him to his feet. She looked into his eyes and spoke words that he would remember for the rest of his life. We did not come here to take new slaves. We came here to break chains. You are free now, all of you. The Dominion no longer rules this world. The Korathi stared at her in disbelief. Freedom was a word they had only heard in whispered legends, stories of a time before the Dominion came. They did not know how to believe it, but then the human soldiers began distributing food and medicine. They began treating the wounded and rebuilding the damaged shelters. They asked for nothing in return. They simply helped word spread across the planet within hours. By the end of the week, the Korathi had begun to organize. Within a month, they had formed their own military units, eager to join the fight against their former masters. The liberation of Korath 4 became the first of many. The first falling domino in a chain that would bring an empire to its knees, on the ground. Colonel Sung-O led the most feared human unit in the war. They called themselves the Warong Brigade, named after ancient warriors from Korean history. They specialized in impossible missions, infiltration, sabotage, the destruction of targets that regular forces could not reach. Sung was a hard man, forged by tragedy. He had lost his younger brother in the first battle above Earth. He had watched friends die in the vacuum of space, their bodies floating forever in the cold darkness. Every night he saw their faces in his dreams. Every morning he woke up ready to avenge them. His current mission was simple: destroy the Dominion Control Center on a moon called Telvarothri. The center coordinated communications across an entire sector. Without it, enemy fleets would be blind and deaf for weeks. His team landed under cover of darkness, their stealth suits making them invisible to sensors. They moved through enemy territory like ghosts, avoiding patrols, bypassing security systems, leaving no trace of their passage. Sung found the control center deep underground. Protected by heavy blast doors and guarded by elite Valoran soldiers, a frontal assault would be suicide. So he did not attempt one. Instead, he found the ventilation system. 2 hours later, explosive charges detonated throughout the facility. The control center collapsed into rubble. Enemy communications across the sector went silent. Sung and his team were extracted before the Dominion even understood what had happened. But the humans were not just warriors. They were innovators. They were thinkers. They were scientists who solved impossible problems because no one had told them the problems were impossible. Chief Engineer Guhan worked aboard the flagship Guangetto, surrounded by computers and tools and half-finished projects. She was responsible for the most important breakthrough of the war, a revolutionary fold drive that made human ships faster than anything the Dominion possessed. Before her invention, fold space travel required precise calculations and careful preparation. Ships had to wait hours between jumps. Fleets moved along predictable routes that could be anticipated and defended. Gi Wu changed everything. Her new drive allowed ships to jump instantly without waiting. Fleets could appear anywhere in Dominion space without warning. They could strike a target, destroy it, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. The enemy could not defend what they could not predict. "You have given us the ability to be everywhere at once," Admiral Park told her after the successful test. "This will win the war." Gi Wu shook her head. "I just built a machine. You and the soldiers are the ones who will win the war. I just made it a little easier." Meanwhile, on a research station hidden in the outer solar system, Dr. Narration faced a different kind of battle. The Dominion had threatened to deploy bioweapons against Earth, engineered plagues designed to kill every human being on the planet. It was their final threat, their last desperate attempt to force surrender. Nari worked with scientists from a dozen liberated species, studying samples of Dominion bioweapons captured in battle. Day after day, she analyzed genetic sequences and tested potential countermeasures. The work was slow and frustrating. Every failure meant more lives at risk. But Nari did not give up. She could not give up. Her parents lived on Earth. Her younger sister had just had a baby. Every face she loved depended on her finding a solution. On the 300th day of her research, she found it. A universal antivirus that could neutralize any Dominion bioweapon. She tested it once, twice, 10 times. The results were always the same. The threat was neutralized. Earth was safe. When she transmitted her findings to General Kim, the old man smiled for the first time in months. "Well done, Doctor. You have saved us all." Nari thought of her family back home. She thought of her newborn nephew who would grow up in a world without fear of extinction. She allowed herself to cry, just for a moment. Then she went back to work. The war was not over yet. There was still more to do. Across the galaxy, the Dominion began to crumble. The Telvar rebelled, using Weepo. Ends smuggled by human agents. The Karathi formed their own fleet and joined the war. Other species, inspired by humanity's example, began to fight back against their masters. The empire that had stood for 4,000 years was breaking apart, and humanity was just getting started. The final battle began on a morning that had no dawn. In the darkness of space above Varith Prime, 2 fleets faced each other across a void filled with stars. One fleet served an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 4,000 years. The other served a species that had been considered primitive just decades ago. General Dae Kim stood on the bridge of the Wan Wang, humanity's largest warship. He was old now, his body worn by years of war. His hands trembled slightly when he gripped the railing. His eyes were tired from too many sleepless nights, spent planning and worrying and mourning the fallen, but his spirit was unbroken. "It had always been unbroken," report, he said quietly. Admiral Una Park answered from her station. "The Coalition fleet is in position. 47 liberated species have sent ships to join us. Combined force totals over 800 vessels. The Dominion fleet numbers approximately 1,000 ships. 1,000 ships. The largest gathering of military power the Dominion had ever assembled. Every remaining warship in their navy had been called to defend the throne world. This was their last stand. If they fell here, their empire would fall with them." Colonel Sungo stood beside the general, his Warong soldiers ready on assault transports throughout the fleet. Chief Engineer Ji Wuhan monitored the fold drives that would allow their ships to strike with devastating precision. In the medical bay, Dr. Narayun prepared for the casualties that would surely come. They had all come so far. They had all lost so much. But they were here, together, at the end of everything. General Kim opened a channel to the entire fleet. His voice carried across hundreds of ships, reaching the ears of soldiers from dozens of species. "Warriors of the Coalition," he began. Today, we fight the final battle of this war. Behind us lies a galaxy that has known only slavery and fear for 4,000 years. Before us lies the heart of an empire that believed itself invincible. He paused and looked at the faces around him. Human Korathi, Telvari beings from worlds he had never visited, fighting alongside soldiers from Earth because humanity had given them something precious? Hope. We did not start this war, he continued. We did not ask for this conflict. We simply refused to kneel. We refused to surrender our freedom. We refused to become slaves. And when we learned that others had been chained for centuries, we refused to look away. His voice grew stronger, filled with conviction earned through years of struggle. Today we break the last chain. Today we tear down the last throne. Today we show the galaxy that tyranny cannot stand against the will of those who choose to be free. Fight well, fight hard, and know that whatever happens, we have already won. Because we prove that even the greatest empire can be brought low by those who refuse to give up. The channel closed. Silence filled the bridge for a long moment, then Yuna spoke. All ships report ready, General. Kim looked at the enemy fleet one last time. He thought of Earth. He thought of his family. He thought of all the soldiers who had died believing in the cause he had started so many years ago. Begin the attack. The battle for Varath Prime lasted 3 days. It was the largest military engagement in galactic history. Ships clashed in clouds of fire and debris. Fighters wove between capital ships, their pilots performing impossible maneuvers. Soldiers boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand in corridors. Filled with smoke and blood, the Dominion fought with desperate fury. They knew this was the end. Victory meant survival. Defeat meant extinction. Their admirals threw everything they had at the coalition fleet, sacrificing ships and soldiers without hesitation. But the coalition did not break. When human ships were destroyed, Korothi vessels filled the gaps. When Telvari fighters fell, more rose to take their place. The Alliance held together through the darkest hours of the battle. Bound by something stronger than strategy or tactics, they were fighting for freedom. And freedom was worth dying for. On the second day, Colonel Sungo led his Warang soldiers in a desperate assault on the Dominion command station. They fought through corridors filled with enemy troops, losing soldiers with every step forward. Sung himself was wounded twice but refused to stop. He had come too far to fail now when they reached the command center. They found the Dominion's supreme commander waiting for them. He was a massive Valoran covered in ceremonial armor, holding a blade that had killed hundreds of rebels throughout his career. You cannot win, he snarled at Sung. Even if you take this station, our fleet will destroy yours. This war ends with your extinction. Awang raised his weapon. Maybe, but you will not live to see it. Their fight lasted only seconds. Sung was faster. The Supreme Commander fell with a human blade through his heart. The command station went silent. Without their leader, the Dominion fleet began to crumble. Coordination failed. Ships retreated without orders. Some captains surrendered rather than face destruction. By the end of the third day, the battle was over. The coalition had won. Ambassador Yun Kong walked into the Great Hall of the Dominion Council with General Kim and Admiral Park at her side. The surviving council members sat at their ancient table, their faces pale with shock and fear. They had never imagined this moment. They had never believed it possible. The war is over, Yun announced. Her voice was calm and clear, just as it had been years ago when she had delivered the declaration of war. The Valoran Dominion is dissolved. Every enslaved species is freed. Your ruling castes will face judgment for crimes committed over 4,000 years. A Valoran elder rose from his seat. His hands were shaking. His voice was barely a whisper. How? He asked. How did you do this? You were nothing. Primitives playing with nuclear weapons on a single world. How did you defeat us? Yun looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice held something that might have been pity. You watched our wars and called us violent. You studied our history and called us broken. You saw our conflicts and believed we were weak. She shook her head slowly. You never understood. We have been fighting for survival since before we discovered fire. Every war taught us something. Every defeat made us stronger. Every victory reminded us why we fight. She stepped closer to the council table. You thought our chaos was weakness? It was not weakness. It was practice. You thought our divisions meant we could not unite? You were wrong. Threaten our home, threaten our families, and humanity becomes something you cannot defeat. The elder sank back into his chair, broken and defeated. Ian turned and walked out of the hall. The galaxy had changed. The era of empires was over. 3 months later, Luna Park stood on the surface of a liberated world, watching alien children play in a field of purple flowers. They ran and laughed and chased each other without fear. For the first time in generations, they were free. A young officer approached her. "Admiral, what happens now?" "The war is over. What do we do next?" Una watched the children for a long moment. She thought about everything humanity had been through. The years of preparation, the battles won and lost, the friends who had died so that others could live. "Now we build something better," she said. "We created an alliance to fight a war. Now we turn it into something that protects the peace. We make sure this never happens again, not to us, not to them." She gestured at the playing children. "Not to anyone." The young officer nodded slowly. "Do you think we can do it? Build something that lasts?" Una smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was genuine. "We are human," she said. "We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed us. We went from caves to stars in the blink of cosmic time. We faced an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds, and we did not just survive. We won." She looked up at the sky, where ships from a dozen species orbited peacefully together. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this: never underestimate humanity. We might be chaotic. We might be stubborn. We might fight each other over things that seem foolish to others. But when we have to, we are capable of wonders. The children continued to play, their laughter carrying across the field. The galaxy had changed forever, and humanity would make sure it changed for the better. The war was over. The future was just beginning.